When some tried to privatize Social Security and Medicare, Bill Nelson stopped them. As one of America's most independent senators, Bill Nelson delivers for Florida. Paid for by Priorities USA Action and smp.priorities.org, SenateMajority.com. Not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of The Cheapest Meal presented by Deep Fried Draft. My name is Brian Bosarge. We got a great show today for you. As anybody who listens to the show probably knows, I'm a native of Mobile, Alabama. Have lived here all my life. So there's a lot of issues going on in the city of Mobile right now, and for that, we're going to bring in our guests. Our guest today is a writer for AL.com covering the South Alabama Jaguars and more. He's also the co-host of the Afternoon Sports Drive on WNSP, which is 105.5 here in Mobile. My guest today is Creg Stephenson. Craig, how are you doing this morning?
Hey, doing great, Brian. How are you?
Doing awesome. Craig, I wanted to have you on to talk about everything that's going on here in Mobile, relevant to the sports world today, especially what's going on with the future of the on-campus stadium at South Alabama and its impact on the rest of everything else in Mobile. So what's the latest going on there?
That's a good question. It's kind of, I guess you could say it's on hold now. The university has asked for funding assistance from the city of Mobile and the county of Mobile County, I guess you could say. And as of right now, they're both on hold. They have met before both of those bodies, the city council and the county commission, and have not been told no, but have not been told yes. And I think that the holdup is what would happen to Ladd-Peebles Stadium, which is the city-owned stadium where South Alabama has been playing its home games. They also hold the Reese's Senior Bowl there, the Dollar General Bowl, the Gulf Coast Challenge, which is a game between two HBCU schools, as well as several high school games. And I think if the idea is that if South Alabama gets its own stadium, those other college games would go to the South Alabama on-campus stadium. Then they would retrofit Ladd-Peebles Stadium into a smaller facility, a high school stadium, downsizing it from about 40,000 seats to about 6,000 seats, and also work, at least that's the mayor's hope, is that they would use the rest of that property as a green space, playground, and so forth. The problem is, as far as the city council and county commission see it, is that the mayor has not drawn up a plan. He has just said, this is my idea, but they don't have any, what would Ladd-Peebles Stadium look like if they retrofitted it. So there's some hesitancy on that, and obviously the people that live around Ladd, that's a big revenue generator for that neighborhood, in terms of parking, in terms of the businesses in the area that, sell gas and so forth. So I think that's a concern. I think it's ultimately going to get done. The big issue is that they want us, because of the idea that they want to start playing in it in 2020, the new stadium that is, they would probably have to start on it sometime in July. And right now that doesn't look like that's going to happen. The university people have said if we don't get this funding from the city and county, we can't proceed immediately. And if it, my gut feeling is if they don't, put a shovel in the ground, so to speak, this month, it's probably going to be 2021 at the earliest before South Alabama can play on campus, which would be disappointing, considering that the 2020 season they would have both Troy and UAB at home. But, a stadium later is better than no stadium at all, but we don't know for sure that that's the case, but it's trending that direction, I would say, right now.
Can South Alabama get this done without the city and county's help?
They say they can, well, at least not immediately. I think the issue, a problem that they run into is that because the city of Birmingham partnered with UAB on the new stadium that they're building in downtown Birmingham, I think the people who would otherwise donate to South Alabama are waiting to see if there's going to be some, local government involvement here. South Alabama is not one of those programs like in Alabama or Auburn, obviously, that has a ton of deep-pocketed alums. They've only been playing football for, this will be their 10th season this fall. So I think there is money there, but I do think the people that are in control of it, not necessarily the school donors, but the corporations in the area that might contribute, I think they're waiting to see what the county government does.
I got you. Let me ask you a quick question. What stadium do you think is in worse shape, Ladd Stadium or Legion Field?
I've not been to Legion Field in a long time, but based on everything I hear, I guess Legion Field. I don't know. It's hard to say because, Ladd, I hear all these horror stories about Ladd, and I don't necessarily see it. Then again, I'm in the press box most of the time. I haven't gone to many games there as a fan. The last game I went to as a fan there was probably a Senior Bowl in the 90s sometime, so it's hard to say. But I've never had an issue at Ladd. But then again, like I said, I sit in the press box and park inside the gate. But I don't think Ladd is in any great danger of collapsing right now, but there are infrastructure issues in terms of the way the restrooms and concession stands and all that sort of stuff. And then, again, there's not ample parking inside the gate, which means you kind of have to park out in the neighborhood, which people are hesitant to do. But I do think if they let, this is not a stadium that they could play in 10 years from now if there was no renovation done. I do firmly believe that. And South Alabama has even said, look, we got no problem playing in the stadium for the next couple of years till we get ours done, but we don't want to be here any longer than we have to. And to be honest with you, I'm always of the opinion that if you're a college football program, you should play on campus. I think that's just part of the college experience. If you can make it work, you should play on campus. There are a few programs that play off campus. Miami, I guess, would be the most prominent, and we always hear, concerns about what, the atmosphere at whatever they're calling that stadium now is not what it was at the old Orange Bowl, which was also off campus, but it was at least in Miami. So I think that, they need to get this done. I hope they get this done for the good of the program, for the good of the students and the fans and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, talk about South Carolina is this odd situation because I've gone there once and it's like a mile and a half from their campus, but you couldn't tell from the game day atmosphere, but it's also an off-campus stadium. Quick story about Legion Field. I've only been there once, and I covered the 2016 Birmingham Bowl there a couple of years ago, and they had me sitting on the front row of the press box. And this was 20, 30 degrees outside that day. There was a draft in the press box. That told me enough to know that Legion Field needed to go. Glad UAB's getting their own stadium.
Yeah, the funny thing is that because they played the Senior Bowl at Ladd Peebles Stadium, facilities for people that are working the game, media and scouts and that sort of thing are great. The press box at Ladd is wonderful. The turf itself is in great shape. It's just that if you're buying a ticket and sitting in the stands, the experience is not quite as good for you.
It is not. While we're talking about, let's talk about the Senior Bowl. What do you feel? Maybe some back channel rumblings that you think happened there between Phil Savage and the Senior Bowl?
It's a good question, and obviously Phil just left the Alabama radio broadcast team too, which I found curious in its timing, because when he just took a job as the general manager of the Phoenix team in the Alliance of American Football, and at the time he said he had hoped to do both jobs, continue to do the Alabama radio, but then all of a sudden he came out this week and said he wasn't going to do it anymore. So I think if you go back to, I think that when Phil Savage wrote his book that came out about a year ago now, there were some things in there that did not make Nick Saban happy. And I think that was kind of the beginning of his I don't want to say fall from grace. That's too strong a word. But, his what do you say? I don't know. Anyway, it was the beginning of the end with him in terms of Alabama, I think. And because of that, there are people that run the Senior Bowl that are deeply involved with Alabama as well, and I think that hurt that relationship a little bit. Phil left the Senior Bowl, and because he was no longer with the Senior Bowl, he was not quite as valuable to Alabama football, so now he's no longer on the broadcast team too. I don't think any of that's a coincidence. I thought Phil was fantastic at both jobs. I feel like the guy they hired, Jim Nagy, seems like he's on the ball. But the issues with the Senior Bowl have not been in terms of getting good players to the game. The people that do what you do don't have any issues with the Senior Bowl. Again, it's the people who are buying tickets and sitting in the stands. I mean, this attendance is down significantly in the last 5 or 6 years, and I felt like they needed to hire somebody who was a little bit more of a marketing genius, or split that into 2 jobs and hire a scout to run the game, and then hire a marketer to sell it to the people. And they didn't do that. They basically Phil Savage left, and they went and found a younger version of Phil Savage. And it may work, I don't know, but I think that if your concern is we want every seat in that stadium filled on game day because it doesn't look good for TV if the stadium's half empty, I'm not sure if they answered that question.
Well, couldn't you feasibly answer that question by moving into a 25,000-seat stadium at South Alabama?
I would think so. The issue, there are two issues. One is I thought it would be a good idea to move the game itself to South Alabama when that stadium opens, but keep the game week activities at the Ladd site because it's so convenient to downtown. It's so convenient to I-10. All the scouts stay down around the downtown area over or even across the bay. It's just so easy to go back and forth to Ladd if you have to go every day or multiple times a day. If anybody who's ever driven from Ladd to the South Alabama campus, particularly during a busy traffic time of the day, it's a half hour easy. That's if you hit all the traffic lights correctly. So I wonder about having all of the game week activities out at South Alabama. Now they're about to open a beautiful practice facility out there, and that certainly would be attractive, especially in January when the weather can be kind of tough. But I just would rather see, even if they downsize Ladd to a high school facility, I would rather see those game week activities remain in that part of town just because it's easier for all the NFL people to operate.
I thought about that too, and even like you said, if they downsize it to 6K, you could still easily get everybody in there that's going to be at a practice that'll look more full with more people, with more with more media and the fans in there.
Right, and for years they held practices across the bay at Fairhope Stadium. They used to practice some at UMS Wright. I mean, those are both high school stadiums. And I think with TV involved, with the NFL Network broadcasting every practice, maybe they want to kind of showcase where the game's going to be played, and I can understand that. But from a convenience standpoint to the people that are actually working the game, that make the Senior Bowl what it is, the NFL connection is what, with the NFL coaches and scouts and 1,000 NFL personnel in Mobile for a week. That's kind of what makes the Senior Bowl different from every other All-Star game. And I think you might lose some of that if you move it off camp, if you move it way off into the west, into West Mobile.
Selfishly for myself, I would literally have to make one right turn after I come out of my neighborhood to get to South Alabama. So it wouldn't hurt my feelings, but I completely get what you're saying.
And I think they would have to do, and I think they probably will, but I think they would have to build some more hotels out in that part of town. And I think with the stadium being out there, they're probably going to do that, but it might take a little bit more work than they maybe thought originally.
Last question on the Senior Bowl. Is Rob Lee Hockey still in charge of the media there as far as you know?
As far as I know.
Yeah, I haven't heard any different. I didn't know if you had
Yeah.
or not.
Well, when they hired Jim Nagy, I asked him if he was still going to be there, and he said yes. So as far as I know, the only change was Phil. Patrick Wu left to take a job with Tennessee Titans, but that happened before Phil left. As far as I know, everybody that was working at the Senior Bowl as of the last game is still there.
Well, let's move on. You went viral, as the kids say, when you live blogged the first 24 hours of the SEC Network. So we got to talk about some SEC now. So we might as well start with the Kings. If you had to bet the mortgage, who's starting for Alabama against Louisville, Hurts or Tua?
Tua Tagovailoa. I think he's assuming he's healthy. He's gonna prove that he's the better quarterback. And nothing against Jalen Hurts. He has his strengths, but with the offensive weapons that they have, particularly at the receiver position, those young guys, and what we saw in the fourth quarter and overtime of that Georgia game, he's just a totally different quarterback than Alabama's had in a long time. I guess A.J. McCarron would be the closest they've had to him. Before that, you've got to go back a long way to have somebody at Alabama that is as dynamic as Tua Tagovailoa. So I think it's going to be him. It should be him. We know Nick Saban is huge on ball security, so there's a possibility he may stick with Jalen Hurts, but I very seriously doubt it.
If either one of them is not the starting quarterback in the first game, does the other transfer?
During the season? Is that what you're asking?
Similar to how Blake Barnett did
I don't think
a couple years ago.
I think that, especially with Jalen Hurts, he's a potential graduate. He could graduate after this year and then be a graduate transfer and then have a year of eligibility. With this new redshirt rule, that kind of complicates things because theoretically he could stick around for the first 4 games and then transfer somewhere else and not lose a year. But he doesn't seem like that kind of guy. Despite what his father was quoted as in an online interview, I think with Bleacher Report, I don't think that he's going to be the kind of guy that would leave in the middle of the year. Tua, on the other hand, I don't see it either. I think it would be a situation where he figures he could win the job back during the course of the year. But it doesn't put you in a good situation. We've seen so many quarterbacks transferring, and even at Alabama, so many transfer. You mentioned Barnett. I think Barnett was kind of a special case. We've seen him transfer again. He's already transferred from Arizona State to South Florida, where he's probably going to have a chance to start this year. But I don't put Tua or Jalen in the same boat as Blake Barnett.
Would Jalen Hurts benefit if he's not the starting quarterback? Would he benefit from going the Braxton Miller route and just converting to either running back or wide receiver and make that as for his NFL future?
I guess so. I don't think he's an NFL quarterback. You're more qualified to make that decision than I am, based on being a talent evaluator. But it probably would help him. On the other hand, if you move Jalen Hurts to another position, then you're one injury away from having to play. I guess you could move it back, but it probably would make more sense for him. I don't know if he's a receiver, running back, defensive back. That would be the decision you would have to make. The problem is if you move him to receiver, is he going to be better than those 3 sophomores he got coming back from last year? If you move him to running back, he's not going to be better than Jalen, Najee Harris, and Damian Harris. So I don't know where he would play. That's why I think that if he did move, defensive back might be his best bet.
Maybe he takes the John Franklin route and transfers to another school and plays a different position.
FAU would love to have him, I'm sure.
Let's stick with the SEC. Is there a dark horse candidate that can contend this year outside of, say, Bama, Georgia, or maybe even Auburn?
Let's see. Well, I don't know if contend. I don't think they're going to win the West, but I think Mississippi State is going to be better than people think because, it's a little bit different. You always wonder about a coaching change, but it's a little bit different. Joe Moorhead has been a head coach before. Now, granted, it was on the FCS level, but it's not like he's a guy that's just coming into doesn't know what he's doing. And B, there is a lot of talent hanging out there in Starkville. I think it's 19 returning starters. One of the more dynamic quarterbacks in the country, and Nick Fitzgerald, assuming he's healthy, a great defensive front. So I think Mississippi State is probably the third best team in the West right now. Over in the East, I really like South Carolina. I think Will Muschamp, you talk about a guy that has exceeded expectations. I think everybody thought that was a disaster when he was hired, but he's been excellent. And, I don't think Florida's quite ready, although I think Mullen will turn them around very quickly. But I do think South Carolina is the best challenger to Georgia this year.
I think so too, and they get them early, second game of the season at home. If South Carolina can win that game, I think there's no reason they can't win the SEC East this year. Since this is a draft show, let's at least ask one draft question. Do you think anytime soon in the foreseeable future there's going to be a year where the SEC doesn't have the most draft picks?
I would find it hard to believe. I think that, the entire draft, probably not. With all that talent Clemson's got coming out this year, you could see the ACC challenge maybe this year, but in the first round, but not overall. No, I mean, it's, all the better players are in this part of the country, and when you've got, programs down here contending for national championships every year, you're going to get the best players. And so, no, I don't see that ever happening anytime soon. It's, at certain positions you may see it, but overall, no, I think the SEC is kind of on top to stay.
So yeah, I listen to listen to the afternoon sports drive on my way home most days for 20 to 30 minutes, depending on Cottage Hill Road traffic. Yep. So I gotta ask, is there something that you have to talk about on a day-to-day basis on that show that you absolutely hate talking about, but you have to because it sells here?
I don't like talking about recruiting during the off season much. I mean, the off recruiting season, I should say. I don't like talking about recruiting in June, although with the early signing period now in December, it moved things up a little bit. That's the biggest part of it. I'm not a huge follower of high school sports in this area because I didn't grow up here, so I don't really know the history of the programs all that well, so I kind of get out of my depth sometimes with that. But that's probably about it. I don't know. I mean, you kind of wing it every once in a while, and you get through it. And sometimes, though, there are certain topics that we'll get on. The Ladd Stadium topic, for example. I mean, we can introduce that as a topic, and then it will take up the entire show. We can talk about the struggle between public and private schools in high school sports, and it will take up the entire show. So. Like I said, sometimes you have to wing it. Sometimes you hope people call in because it's a little bit of a struggle, particularly during the summer when there's not a whole lot going on. But, from once August gets here, the show pretty much writes itself until January.
Right. Yeah. High school recruiting is I follow South Carolina's recruiting because I am a South Carolina fan. First and foremost, but I'll follow their recruiting. But beyond that, it's like I do the NFL draft year round, so I'm constantly on that. And it's hard enough for me to evaluate college juniors and seniors as they project to the NFL. I just really cannot fathom making a living off of trying to evaluate high school now sophomores and juniors and projecting them to the collegiate level. It's just crazy to me.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there was, the other day, I'm trying to, the 4th of July holiday is messing me up because I can't remember if it was last week or the week before, but the number one player in the class of 2020 committed to Alabama, and he did it with a recruiting video and all that. It was all well done, but it's like, this guy can't sign for 17 more months. Are we sure that he's 100% committed to Alabama?
Right.
There's no chance he's going anywhere else. So that gets ridiculous sometimes.
It's maddening to me. Last thing, Craig, I want to congratulate you and your wife on your expecting daughter here. As the I've known your wife, Christina. I think we were in the same kindergarten class, for God's sake. So, I mean, we go back a ways, and I just want to congratulate you and your family on your upcoming daughter. And as a father of a 3-year-old daughter, a 39-year-old with a 3-year-old daughter, I wish you all the luck in the world, because, sir, you are going to need it.
Well, you already know how old Christina is, but I'll be 45 in August, and this is my first child. So, and not only that, she's coming the second week of football season, so it should be an adventure for us for sure. But we're looking forward to it. We spent last weekend cleaning out the extra bedroom to turn into a nursery, and then we're actually going to be putting baby furniture together later today. But I appreciate it, and yeah, we're very excited. And Christina's an only child, so I got to tell you, her parents are over the moon about it too. So,
well, I was also an only child, and so yeah, and like I said, my wife is 43, so yeah, probably shouldn't have said that on the air.
You're not supposed to say that on the air.
But so yes, we as older parents, I think this is becoming I'm going to say a newer thing, but it's becoming a more common thing. People are waiting a lot longer to have children now.
I kind of look at myself, and when I was 25, there was no way I was ready to be a father. And I look at people that I went to high school with that have already got grandkids, but God bless them.
I'm 39, and I'm 39 now, and I still don't think I'm ready to be a father. But I mean, I've been one for 3 years now, so it's only can go up from here. They keep telling me. So, Creg, tell everybody where they can find you and follow your work.
Sure, AL.com/sports, and also on Twitter at Creg Stephenson, and the first name is Creg, last name Stephenson.
Creg, thanks for taking your time out on this Saturday for joining me, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right, Brian, take care.
That was Creg Stephenson of AL.com and WNSP locally here in Mobile. We talked about the South Alabama Jaguars and their future stadium. We talked about Ladd-Peebles Stadium and what is going to happen to it. We talked a little bit about the Senior Bowl and Phil Savage and what happened, what's there. We talked a little bit about the Alabama Crimson Tide, what's going on there. We talked about the SEC. Wide range of topics today. We talked with Creg Stephenson, but it was good catching up with him, and always good to read his stuff. If you're a fan of the South Alabama Jaguars, you definitely need to follow his work. He does one of the best jobs covering that team. But that's going to do it for today's edition of The Cheapest Meal presented by Deep Fried Draft. Next week on the show we're going to talk with an agent. Austin Atkinson of Atkinson Sports is going to join us. We're going to talk about his role as a football agent and what can he expect from an agent's perspective on the two new leagues that are founding next year, the Alliance of American Football, and then in 2020 the XFL 2.0. We'll talk to him about that and some other topics. So look forward to that. Thanks everybody for listening. Until next time.
At Outback Steakhouse, we live by Aussie rules. And Aussie rule number 1 is ensuring steak satisfaction every time. We offer the highest quality cuts of steak, seasoned and seared to perfection, with a secret blend of 17 herbs and spices and cooked just the way you want. So join us tonight in Mobile at 4017 Airport Boulevard. We're open daily for lunch at 11 a.m. Plan your visit at Outback.com. Aussie rules.
The Starlight Lounge presents An Evening with the Progressive Box.
Oh, what a great audience. Let's dim the lights for this next one. Nope, too much. There it is. Gotta get things just right. Like Progressive's Name Your Price tool. Tell us what you want to pay, and we help you find coverage options that fit your budget. And now the mood is right. Wait, the lights are back on again. Trudy, can you? And now it's completely dark.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.